The morning sun crept through the blinds, casting thin lines of light across the bedroom. Emma had just woken up, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. She stretched, feeling the stiffness in her back, and glanced at the clock. It was too early for most of the house. But not for the uneasy tension she felt lingering in the air. It had been a week since her stepson, Jake, had arrived to stay for a short visit. He was polite enough, quiet most of the time, but there was always an underlying sense of caution, like he didn't quite know where he belonged in the house anymore. Emma understood. She had been in that position herself once, an outsider looking in, trying not to make mistakes. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts, and got up to start her morning routine. Her husband Mark had already left for work, leaving her alone in the stillness of the house. She liked these quiet moments, the kind when she could think, breathe, and feel like the world hadn't yet started demanding attention. Emma moved to the dresser and began changing her clothes for the day. She had chosen a simple blouse and jeans, something comfortable and practical. She was mid-motion, pulling her shirt over her head, when a creak from the hallway froze her in place. For a moment, she hoped it was nothing, but then the bedroom door slowly opened. "Jake," she called softly, her voice tinged with surprise. The boy froze in the doorway, eyes wide, and for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Emma grabbed the nearest towel from the chair beside her, wrapping it quickly around herself. Jake's face flushed, and he took an awkward step back. I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone was in here," he stammered, his hands raised defensively. Emma's heart pounded, not out of fear, but from the sudden surge of panic and embarrassment. "It's okay, Jake. Just close the door next time." Her voice was calm, but inside she was flustered. Jake nodded, still staring at her awkwardly, then hurried out, muttering another apology. Emma exhaled, letting the tension leave her shoulders. She had been worried about this moment. The thought of anyone seeing her in that vulnerable state had always unnerved her, and now it had happened. But she reminded herself it was a mistake, a simple accident. Nothing more. She finished dressing quickly, her mind spinning with the awkwardness of the encounter. For the rest of the morning, she moved through the house cautiously, every noise making her wonder if Jake was still lurking nearby. Breakfast was quiet. Jake kept his gaze on his cereal, pushing it around the bowl instead of eating. The tension between them was palpable. Though neither spoke of it, Emma tried to focus on practical things: laundry, making the bed, preparing a few notes for her work at home, but her mind kept returning to that brief, embarrassing moment. She remembered when Mark had told her about blending households and the challenges that came with it. "It's all about boundaries," he had said. "Respect, communication, patience." She now realized how much truth there was in that simple advice. Later, as she folded clothes in the living room, Jake appeared beside her quietly. She looked up, forcing a gentle smile. "Good morning," she said softly, though it felt strange with the lingering tension. "Morning," Jake replied, avoiding her eyes. He hesitated, then spoke in a quieter tone. "I didn't mean to. Come in." Emma nodded. "I know, Jake. It was an accident." "Really?" She put the folded shirt aside, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He flinched slightly, not from fear, but from the unexpected touch. "We just need to be careful, that's all. Everyone makes mistakes." He nodded again, slower this time, and she saw a flicker of relief cross his face. There was understanding there, though unspoken. They both knew it had been awkward, but they didn't need to dwell on it. Sometimes the silence between words carried more weight than speech. The morning continued in an unusual quietness. Jake kept to himself, walking softly from room to room, while Emma tried to ignore the lingering embarrassment. She felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that it had been handled, anxiety about what Mark might say if he knew, and a deeper awareness of how fragile their household's dynamic could be. Emma paused for a moment at the window, watching the sunlight shimmer across the lawn. The neighbor's dog barked faintly, and a car drove past on the street. Everything looked normal, but inside she felt the tension from the morning still pressing against her chest. She realized she had to navigate this carefully, not just for herself, But for Jake, he was still learning how to be comfortable in this house. And she couldn't let one incident define their relationship as she moved toward the kitchen to start breakfast for herself. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, expecting Jake, but it was only the cat brushing past her legs. She exhaled, realizing how jumpy she had become. It was silly, she told herself. But she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. Breakfast was simple toast and coffee. But the silence between them was filled with meaning. Emma wondered how to repair the small crack in their morning without making it bigger. She decided to start with small gestures, a smile, light conversation. Offering Jake the first cup of coffee, asking about his plans for the day. Little by little, she could see him relaxing. Though the awkwardness lingered just beneath the surface, by mid-morning, Emma had settled into her work, and Jake had disappeared into his room. Headphones on, music playing softly. She sat at her desk trying to focus on emails and reports, but her thoughts drifted back to the morning. She remembered the way he had looked startled, guilty, unsure, and how it reminded her of herself as a young woman, learning boundaries and respect. She realized it wasn't just embarrassment on her part. It had been a lesson for both of them, a reminder that trust and understanding had to be nurtured, even in small moments. The rest of the day passed slowly. Emma checked in on Jake occasionally, offering water or snacks or a small joke to lighten the mood. Each time she saw him respond with small smiles or a laugh that seemed more genuine than before. She felt a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps this awkward start could be transformed into mutual respect and understanding by late afternoon. She heard the front door open and Mark returning from work. She felt a flicker of anxiety, but reminded herself that she had handled the morning discreetly. Nothing had to be said if nothing had been done wrong. She greeted him with a soft smile, asking about his day. Mark seemed preoccupied, but answered politely, unaware of the minor drama that had unfolded earlier after dinner. The family sat together for a brief moment of quiet conversation. Jake spoke more freely, even making a joke about schoolwork, which Emma appreciated. She realized that the morning incident, though awkward, had opened a subtle door between them, a door where honesty, respect, and careful attention could grow. That night, after Jake had gone to bed, Emma sat by the window with a cup of tea. The house was finally quiet, the tension of the day settling into the background. She thought about how fragile relationships could be, how one unexpected moment could test boundaries, and how handling it with patience and care could make all the difference. She sipped her tea, letting the warmth spread through her, and allowed herself a quiet laugh at the absurdity of the morning. Life had a way of throwing moments at you, awkward, unexpected, sometimes embarrassing, but it was how you responded that defined the relationship, the trust and the respect between people. Emma looked out at the night sky, the stars twinkling faintly, and felt a sense of resolve. Tomorrow, she would continue to navigate this new household dynamic with care, patience, and understanding. She would continue to build trust with Jake, making sure he felt safe, respected, and understood, while also maintaining her own sense of dignity and comfort in her home. And though the morning had been awkward, Emma knew one thing: life's unexpected moments didn't have to define the day, they could shape it, teach it, and transform it into something stronger, something more meaningful. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the tension leave her, and whispered softly to herself, "We'll get through this. For now, that was enough." The morning after the awkward encounter started quietly. Emma woke up to the soft light filtering through the curtains, the house still wrapped in silence. She felt the lingering tension from the day before, the memory of Jake standing in the doorway flashing in her mind. She shook it off, determined not to let one awkward moment shape the entire week. Downstairs, Jake was already up, quietly preparing breakfast for himself. Emma noticed his cautious movements from the stairwell. He avoided eye contact when their eyes met, offering only a small nod. It made her heart ache a little. She didn't want him to feel uncomfortable. And yet she understood that their morning had left an invisible mark on both of them. Emma decided to start the day with calmness and routine. She brewed coffee, organized a few papers for work, and tried to focus on small tasks. But Jake's presence was always there, a subtle weight in the air. Every time she passed his room or heard him moving quietly, she felt a pang of responsibility, a need to make him feel safe and at ease. Breakfast was silent as it had been the day before. Toast and scrambled eggs sat on the table, but neither of them seemed hungry enough to eat. Emma took a deep breath and decided to break the tension. "Did you sleep well?" she asked softly. Jake looked up, startled by the question. "Yeah, I guess," he said. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, but there was a flicker of trust forming in his tone. Emma smiled faintly, encouraging him without pushing too hard. They continued the morning in cautious companionship. Emma tried to maintain a balanced, friendly, approachable, but respectful of boundaries. Jake, on his part, seemed to struggle with normal teenage awkwardness compounded by the incident from yesterday. He moved quietly, spoke softly, and tried not to draw attention to himself. But Emma noticed the little things: how he lingered in the kitchen, how he avoided certain corners of the house, how he seemed on edge despite acting calm. By mid-morning, Emma realized she needed to address the tension in some way. She didn't want Jake to carry embarrassment like a shadow over the week. She gently knocked on his door. "Hey, Jake, can we talk for a minute?" There was a pause before the door opened just slightly. Jake peeked out, hesitant. "Sure," he said, voice low. Emma stepped inside, keeping a careful distance to respect his space. "Look," she began, "I know yesterday morning was awkward. I just want you to know it was an accident. It wasn't intentional, and there's no need for any embarrassment." Jake swallowed and nodded, still avoiding her gaze. "I know. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't mean to." His words trailed off, but the sincerity in his tone was clear. Emma offered a reassuring smile. "You don't have to explain. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move past them." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I respect you, Jake, and I want you to feel comfortable here. That's all." His eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she saw a flicker of relief. "Thanks," he muttered, a small smile breaking through. From that moment, a subtle shift began. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it became manageable. They began to talk in small ways: comments about school, music, or the weather. The conversations were brief, but they built a bridge where none had existed before. Emma realized that empathy, patience, and gentle reassurance were stronger than trying to ignore discomfort. Later that afternoon, while Emma worked at her desk, she overheard Jake speaking softly on the phone in his room. She couldn't hear much, just fragments of words, but the tone suggested concern. She realized he was probably talking to a friend about something personal. For a moment, she felt a pang of guilt. Had their morning been more confusing for him than she imagined? When he finished the call, he came out and offered a small, hesitant smile. "I'm okay," he said. "Don't worry." Emma nodded, appreciating his honesty. She decided to create a calmer, more predictable environment for the rest of the day. She suggested a walk around the neighborhood, something to ease both their minds. Jake agreed, albeit quietly, and they stepped outside into the warm afternoon sun. The walk was simple. Birds chirped in the trees, and neighbors passed by with friendly waves. Emma and Jake walked side by side, maintaining a comfortable distance. Occasionally, she made light comments about the flowers or the changing leaves, and he responded, slowly opening up. She noticed how his shoulders relaxed with each step, how the tension in his face softened. They stopped by a small park bench, and Emma suggested a brief rest. "See, nothing to worry about," she said, smiling. "Just you and me enjoying some fresh air." Jake laughed softly, the sound hesitant but genuine. "Yeah, okay." The conversation that followed was careful but revealing. They talked about school projects, favorite books, and even shared a few small jokes. Emma noticed how Jake's tone changed from cautious to engaged, from distant to attentive. It was subtle, but it was progress. As the sun began to lower in the sky, they returned home. Emma felt a small sense of accomplishment. The day had started with tension and discomfort, but they had navigated it together without incident or escalation. She realized that sometimes emotional boundaries weren't about avoidance, they were about honesty, patience, and gentle guidance. That evening, Mark returned home. He noticed the calm atmosphere immediately, though he didn't comment. Emma kept the mood light, discussing minor events from the day. Jake joined in, contributing a few sentences. And for the first time in 2 days, the house felt like a home rather than a stage for embarrassment. Later, as Emma prepared dinner, she reflected on the morning and afternoon. She had been worried about Mark misinterpreting things, worried about Jake's feelings, and even worried about her own reactions. But she realized that handling awkward situations with care, communication, and emotional honesty could prevent small incidents from growing into larger problems. Dinner passed with quiet conversation, punctuated by laughter at small, harmless jokes. Emma watched Jake carefully, noting how he seemed more relaxed than earlier. It wasn't perfect. There was still a trace of the morning's embarrassment. But it was fading. After dinner, Emma found Jake sitting on the couch reading a book. She sat nearby, picking up her own journal to jot down thoughts. The silence was comfortable now, shared rather than forced. She realized that awkward moments could be opportunities for growth, for understanding, and for building trust. Later, when Jake went to bed, Emma lingered in the living room. She poured herself a cup of tea, letting the warmth fill her hands and calm her mind. The house was quiet again, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't had the night before. The incident that had threatened to throw the household into discomfort had instead become a chance to strengthen their emotional bond. Emma reflected on the subtle ways Jake had begun to trust her small gestures, slight smiles, soft glances. She knew it would take time, but she felt confident that patience and empathy would guide them. She also realized how much she had learned about herself, the importance of composure, respect, and the gentle handling of sensitive moments. By the end of the night, Emma felt prepared for the days ahead. She knew awkwardness might appear again, but she had learned how to navigate it. She had seen that Jake was resilient, capable of understanding and adapting. And she had learned that maintaining emotional clarity and boundaries was not about control. It was about creating a safe, respectful space for everyone. As she turned off the lights and climbed into bed, Emma allowed herself a small smile. The morning had been difficult. The day had tested them both, but they had come through it together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready to face them with honesty, patience, and emotional care guiding her way. And somewhere deep down, Emma realized that these moments, awkward, tense, and uncomfortable, were also opportunities. They were opportunities to teach, to connect, and to grow. And that knowledge gave her hope for the future of her blended household. A quiet hope that trust and understanding could always be rebuilt, one small step at a time.